Now, South Korean lawmakers are expected to gather today for another key vote. They'll decide whether to mandate the appointment of a permanent special counsel to investigate whether President Yoon Yeol committed treason when he declared martial law last week.
Now, the Legislation and Judiciary Committee introduced the motion on Friday, and it was backed by all 11 opposition lawmakers on that committee. 7 lawmakers from the governing People Power Party boycotted the measure. But the wider vote in the National Assembly is still expected to take place. The opposition coalition holds a 192-seat majority in the 300-seat parliament, and so has the power to pass most bills without the PPP's support.
And the vote comes amid a deepening leadership crisis in South Korea. Experts say the PPP is stalling for time to work out a, quote, orderly exit for their embattled leader. The party on Sunday announced Mr. Yoon will step down before his term ends in May 2027. It has been discussing a roadmap for his early resignation, but has not provided details as to when this could happen. The opposition wants him out immediately and arrested. It's working to impeach him with another vote planned for Saturday.
Well, meantime, authorities have banned President Yoon from traveling overseas, citing ongoing investigations. The South Korean leader has apologized for declaring martial law, but protesters say it isn't enough. Thousands braving the cold as they gathered in Seoul last night to demand his removal after he avoided a first attempt to impeach him.
대통령 담화나 이런 게 그렇게 짧게 약간 죄송합니다 하고 그런 식으로 가볍게 끝날 문제가 아니었다 생각을 하는데 국민들은 그때 너무너무 무서워서 며칠 잠을 제대로 못 잤는데 이거를 그 몇 마디로 끝내는 게 맞는 건가 싶어서 좀 저도 그거에 대해서 불만인 것 같습니다.
All right, we are joined by Henry Haggard, a senior advisor at WestExec Advisors. Henry, thank you so much for joining us. Firstly, I want to get your thoughts on the recent travel ban on the president. I mean, it seems like a striking move and perhaps a precursor to further legal action like arrest or impeachment. What does it tell you?
Well, thanks for having me on this. I think it's important to really respect the Korean democratic process. They will work it out. Fortunately or unfortunately, they have practiced with this. They've come through a lot of political turmoil to have the healthy liberal democracy that they have today. So how they manage this is really up to them. But I think what's important is to look at how United States and other international actors are seeing what's going on. If you have a president that can't travel, if you have generals that are saying they're not going to listen to the president's orders, if you have a prime minister who's saying they're going to create some new ruling structure, that is really, it's hard to partner with a country in that situation. And this is getting a domestic situation is becoming an issue for international concern.
Which is exactly what I want to ask you about, Henry. The ruling party, the PPP, says President Yoon no longer involved in domestic and foreign affairs until his pending resignation, which is supposed to happen, before his date runs out. And then the Prime Minister, Han Duck-soo, managing government affairs till he actually steps down. I mean, does the PPP have the power, first of all, to make such a decision? And does Yoon even have to abide by this? I mean, who's conducting business? Who's conducting foreign affairs right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, fortunately, the Korean government is very stable. And I think they will be able to manage despite all these really idiosyncrasies of what's of the system and the peculiarities of what's going on right now. What happened is President Yoon committed the original sin of declaring martial law. This is not something he can come back from. And I think that's the first thing to manage, certainly from an international perspective, to manage that and move on from that and get on to being the healthy, stable, democratic, global leader that Korea is. What you're seeing now is instead of that kind of clean move to the next step, whatever it is, whatever the Korean people and the Korean decide it would be, instead of that, they're trying to game this politically, I think from an international perspective, it could get complicated.
Yeah, Henry, you just said it. It's hard to get back from, but given the growing pressure, many are wondering why the president hasn't resigned voluntarily yet. Considering that stepping down could at least grant him, I don't know, benefits like pension and medical coverage. Why do you think he is digging in his heels rather than opting for a dignified exit?
Well, I don't know. I can't think to understand or I have a knowledge of what he's thinking. But everyone you ask in Korea, anyone who knows the president, knows that he's sticks to his guns. He wants to get the job done. I think that he had some idea that declaring this martial law was going to enable him to do his job. And so I think it's going to take, I think it's hard to imagine him agreeing to step aside. Again, it's not really for us to decide or determine what the best way forward is, but it's clear from an international perspective, this is not a functioning presidency as far as international allies and partners are concerned.
Henry, to your point about the stability of South Korea's institutions, so on a day-to-day basis, operations, law and order, things, on that front, I presume will be okay. But given your experience, at the government-to-government level, how much time, before it becomes an issue, meaning, the lack of a proper hierarchy, proper leadership, when does it become an issue? Apart from the day-to-day concerns, which are okay, but when does it become a problem for, I guess, working with its neighbors, working with other governments? I mean, how much time is there before it becomes an issue?
I think the better question, rather than, or the better factor to be concerned about is a crisis. I think on the day-to-day, probably the machine of Korea Inc., both the conglomerates, the chaebol, as well as the excellent folks in the ministries, they will make the government work, I think, probably for quite some time. And I think probably people would say, hey, look, just sit back, let us conduct our political theater. We'll come to a conclusion that will make sense. Domestically, that makes 100% sense. Internationally, it just doesn't. That's not how international allies and partners work with Korea, and most importantly, in a time of crisis. How is Korea stepping up to have a voice in the evolving situation in Syria? Is Korea focusing on how it can be more present in dealing with President-elect Trump, or is it focused only on its domestic interests?
Okay, so
I think that's the question.
Sure, you touched on the allies, but how about North Korea? I mean, they've been unusually quiet. How do you think Kim Jong-un is viewing the political crisis in the South, and do you think Pyongyang might be strategically sort of withholding comment or action?
I think if the North Korea were to take some kind of action, it would be handing President Yoon a gift on a platter. President Yoon used the excuse of North Korean activity to declare martial law in the first place. I think it was pretty impressive that everyone saw through that in a matter of minutes. So if North Korea were to do something, I think it would be offering Yoon a present. And I just don't think that would be something the North Korean leader would be interested in doing.
Understood, Henry. We do have to leave it there. Thank you very much for talking to us on Asia First here in Singapore. Henry Haggard, Senior Advisor, WestExec Advisors, talking to us there live from Washington, D.C.